Good morning. Welcome everyone to the Automation Fair and to our booth, and welcome everyone that's tuned in via the internet to monitor our real-time event right here in the Automation Fair. I want to talk to you about a couple of different applications with the tManager. One in particular. Before I do that, I'd like to ask how many of you are involved today in integrating plant floor data to plant business systems? Yeah, I see some back there. Yes, thank you. And are any of you getting involved with reliable messaging systems? Yes, got a couple of hands there too. Thank you very much. I want to tell you about a customer of ours, PCC Airfoils. They're a gas turbine blade manufacturer. These turbine blades are turning up to 25,000 RPMs per minute. And you know, when you manufacture something like that, it's got to be done right. So that's a critical thing. So here's the problem. How do you upgrade an existing system that was written in Visual Basic to download recipes and provide production reporting to get a more reliable system, to include the ControlLogix processor and existing legacy equipment, PLC5 and Slick 500 PLCs. So we're going to use a Microsoft SQL database and RSView32 for visualization. And here is how that was put together. With the eATM tManager in the ControlLogix chassis, we're now able to download recipes directly into each of our controllers, upload process data, and put it in the SQL Server database, very simply. The results? Faster data exchange between the database and the legacy PLCs. Reduced time to configure, ability for stored procedures, and failover capability. Let me tell you about another application. This one uses reliable messaging using JMS type messaging. And this is an automotive application where we have essentially the tManager connected to a JMS queue and connected to Rockwell Automation's FactoryTalk Production Center. So here's the problem. We want to transfer complex build instructions from the plant-wide FactoryTalk Production Center right to the assembly line and utilize that data in the manufacturing process. And you can see here's how we put this together. Using the tManager, the production center actually puts messages directly on the JMS queue, and the tManager retrieves the messages, maps the data into the ControlLogix processor, and then transfers the data into the PLC5s. The results? 500 byte packets going in and out of the message queue, the eATM pulling the messages off, the ControlLogix connecting to the legacy PLCs, and so now we've got this more reliable system for production control. So I want to show you the PCC Airfoil demonstration and actually show you the tManager here real quickly, just show how easy it is to put together an application. So we're going to look directly into our project, and what I want to show you is that our goal is to create what we call a message path. In the world of transferring data between our control equipment and our business system, what we want to do is to create the concept of every transaction is a message. So that's a message, and associated with messages are endpoints, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But on the automation side, what I want to do first is to go get information from the controller that's in our chassis. So in our chassis over here, we've got a number of PLCs, and I'm going to go get that furnace data from the PLC5 and show you that I can open the tag list and access all the memory in that controller. And we're going to use that in our transaction. And what we'll do is build a trigger associated with that PLC5. Now, that trigger could be periodic, it could be event-based, you can allow you to compare two different tag values to actually cause a trigger condition. So it's condition-based type triggering. And what I've done is I've created one, and what I'm going to do right now is just drag it over here and fill in the first box. So we've got a trigger for the conditions. The next thing I need to do is to create a map or actually what I want to do next is create the endpoint where we're going to deliver the data. That's going to be in our Microsoft SQL database. And if we open the connection to the database and enumerate the database, you'll see that there's a number of data tables that we're easily able to access for the data itself. And so I'm going to use my furnace temperature tracking table in our transactions. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is define an endpoint of where that data is going to be managed. Endpoints, you can think of them as properties associated with the connection. And endpoints give us the capability to create transaction logs of all ingoing and outgoing messages, to create store and forward conditions such that if the data is not delivered, it'll go into store and forward on the module, and to provide a failover mechanism in the event that the primary database is not available, we can fail over to a secondary database. So I've created an endpoint, and now I'm going to drag it into my box over here. And so what we've got now is a trigger occurring in the PLC5, an endpoint in the Microsoft SQL database with properties for store and forward, for failover, for transaction logging. The final piece is the map. So we would need to map the data somehow, and we're going to do that by creating a mapping type function where the input is going to be our PLC5, and so we've got those registers for the input side of our map, and our output of the map is going to be our SQL database. And so we're going to grab a particular table, and remember I told you we're going to use the furnace temperature tracking table, and we'll drag those items over here into our map and link them together. And so I've already done that, and I want to just now complete the transaction by grabbing the map that I've defined, my PLC5 furnace data, and drop it in there. And that's all there is to it, to create a simple transaction from moving data from the PLC5 to the Microsoft SQL database utilizing a mapping function that we've defined very simply. And so now Amy's going to tell you a little bit more about the highlights of the tManager and other products.